Hey guys, we're going to get into the legislative branch tonight. That is the first of the three branches. It's in Article 1 of the Constitution. So let's get started. 2.3 is really broad. So we break it down into the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. So we're actually going to cover this for like 4 days. So get used to 2.3. We're also tonight going to go into 2.6, identify the process of lawmaking. And so we'll talk about the bill to law process, and again, another Schoolhouse Rocks videos are right around the corner. Your vocab for tonight is Speaker of the House, President Pro Temp. It's actually President Pro Tempore, but nobody likes to say that, so we just make it short. Override, bill, standing committee, pigeonhole, filibuster, conference committee, and pocket veto. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the House of Representatives. This was created by the Virginia plan that we talked about way back in Unit 1. These are the people who are supposed to represent the people of the state. The state's broken down into districts, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on this week. But the state's broken down into districts, and so each of those districts has a representative that represents the people of that district. You have to be 25 years old and a 7-year citizen in order to be a member of the House. There are 435 members in total, and again, it's based off of population, so some states have more than others. The Speaker of the House is the leader of the House right now. His name is Ryan Paul, and it has to be a member of the majority party, and the majority party in the House of Representatives currently are the Republicans. So the powers in just the House of Representatives are the powers to do things like raise taxes. So all money bills have to actually start in the House of Representatives. So a senator can't come up and say, I have a plan to raise taxes, because nobody likes that. They also present the charges for impeachment. Now, a lot of people don't understand what impeachment really means. It just means to be formally accused. You're going to be formally accused of some sort of wrongdoing. The Senate was created by the New Jersey plan, and they represent the state as a whole. Now, as we know, there are 2 senators from every state, meaning that there are 100 members in total. You have to be 30 years old and a 9-year citizen of the United States in order to become a senator. The leaders are both the vice president and the president pro tempore. The vice president is really only there in case of a tiebreaker. Like Joe Biden doesn't sit in there every day in the Senate. Well, neither do the senators, but Joe Biden doesn't sit in the Senate when they are in session. He really is only there in case of a tie, but that is one of the times when we deal with checks and balances and how one person can technically be a member of both or 2 different branches of the government. So the president pro tempore is really in charge of the Senate on the day-to-day operations, and right now it is Orrin Hatch. So the powers of the Senate, they are the people who must approve basically everything that the president does. So when we get into checks and balances, you will hear me say that the Senate has a whole lot of power, and that's compared to the House of Representatives, because they do. They have a whole lot more power. So they have to approve ambassadors, cabinet members, and judges. This is going to come into play a little bit later on when we talk about the Supreme Court. They also have to ratify or approve treaties. So the president can write all the treaties he wants, but they have to be approved by the Senate. And they act as the jury for all impeachment trials. So Congress is the combination of both the House of Representatives and the Senate together. So in total, there are 535 members of Congress. This was created by the Great Compromise that we talked about in Unit 1, and these are the people who make the laws. Okay, they can also have the power to declare war. So it's not just the House, it's not just the Senate, it's Congress in total who declares war. They also override the presidential veto with a 2/3 vote. So it's really difficult, especially when you have party lines that people are trying to kind of abide by. And they have the power to propose amendments. So the bill to law process is not complicated. Well, I'm not going to make it complicated. It is quite complicated. I'm going to try to sum it down and really kind of bring it all into just a few. So the first step is to have an idea. The idea, for instance, might be something like an Amber Alert. As soon as a kid comes up missing, then we need to basically let the public know. So anybody can have an idea for an actual bill. Step 2 is that it has to be introduced to Congress by a congressman. So they can start in the House or in the Senate, right? Unless, of course, it's a money bill that has to start in the House. But it has to be proposed by a congressman. I can't get up there and do it. You couldn't. The president can't even do that. So step number 3 is where it's sent to a standing committee. So you might be presented in the House or the Senate as a whole, but the whole House and the whole Senate don't have time to be able to hear all of these issues every single day. So what ends up happening is they're sent to these permanent committees called standing committees. And a standing committee is where most bills die. Okay, it's very difficult to get out of a standing committee. They have one of 3 options that they can do. They can pass the bill and it moves on to the next step. They can kill the bill automatically and say that's not a good idea. Or they can pigeonhole it, which basically means that it's going to be set aside and it'll probably die. So all of these things can happen in a standing committee. The only way it can get out of the standing committee is for them to actually pass the bill. So step number 4 is where it's debated on the floor of either the House or the Senate. So if it starts in the House, then you're still in the House, and if it starts in the Senate, then you would still be in the Senate at this point. So it's debated on the floor. So anybody can stand up and they can debate this topic or issue or bill that has been presented. So when we talk about filibuster, and we'll watch a couple of videos during class, is to delay a vote by speaking. So only the Senate has this power, and it's during the stage when they're basically debating it in the Senate. And this is only ended by a 60-vote cloture. The 5th step is for them to actually vote on it. Okay, so I have a picture down here of the yays and the nays. And so you can see that this one would pass the Senate. Now, just because you pass, you're going to pass the House, and just because you pass the House doesn't mean you're necessarily going to pass the Senate. So at this point in step number 6, it goes to the other House. So if it started in the House of Representatives, it now shifts over to the Senate, and it goes through the exact same 1 through 5 steps again. If it started in the Senate, now it goes through the House, and again, you're repeating steps 1 through 5 again. Step number 7 is not used all the time, but it is used quite a bit. This is the conference committee. And basically what ends up happening is that the Senate and the House can make changes to any particular bill. So let's just, for instance, say a bill started in the House. The House passes that said bill. When it's sent over to the Senate can go through and they can make changes to that particular bill. So what ends up happening is that they didn't actually pass the exact same bill. Well, only one bill is going to go to the president. And so a conference committee is going to basically work out the differences between the 2 versions of a bill. They have, it's a joint committee, so it's members of the House and members of the Senate who come together. And then those 2 different versions are combined into one. And then it is going to be sent back to both the House and the Senate for reapproval. The last step is the president. So it finally makes it to the president's desk. He has what we call a 10-day rule. He can sign it into law automatically and it becomes law. By this point in time in today's society, we already know pretty much what the president's position is going to be. And there's a big pomp and circumstance around them, the president signing bills into law. The veto, of course, when he says no, or, well, he at this point says no. Unless Congress, of course, overrides it with a 2/3 vote, then that bill is dead. It can also be a pocket veto, which is a little bit more complicated and not something you necessarily even need to know for this class, but I do like to talk about it because it is important and something that the president has the power to do. This is when a president sets a bill aside and does not sign it, okay? So a lot of times presidents can get into hot water by doing or not doing certain things. If Congress is in session and the president sets it aside, it automatically becomes law after 10 days in that 10-day rule. If Congress is out of session, then the bill dies. So a lot of times presidents can make their decision based off of whether Congress is in or out of session, and they don't even have to sign a bill for it to become a law or for it to die, and they don't have to veto it.